Ciao ragazzi, come state? Spero che bene. So this is the fifth of our virtual classes, if I am not mistaken. Um, I did not upload videos until today because if you recall, the college was on break, uh, while people that did not have access to technology were assisted in finding a laptop or a tablet. If you still are lacking equipment, you still have a chance to get either a laptop or a tablet. So please um, send me an email with your information, and I'll send you the form you need to fill. So today's topic is going to be very straightforward, and I'm going to try and make the video short and sweet. So, on to the topic. You might recall that our last video was about ire verbs, and I told you at the end of that video that there is a subset of ire groups, of ire verbs that we hadn't um, covered yet. So today's topic is precisely that, and they are called ire isk verbs. Okay? So, first, I'm going to remind you of the normal ire verbs. This is a standard ire verb. In fact, it's the one we used as an example for the last video. Aprire, right? Io apro, tu apri, lui apre, noi apriamo, voi aprite, loro aprono. And if you recall, in order to conjugate aprire, we just follow the standard procedure. We get rid of the last three letters, write the stem throughout, and then add some endings. And these are the endings for ire verbs, right? So this is all pretty basic. Now, let's look at an isk verb. Isk verbs are actually ire verbs, so they are going to end in ire in their infinitive form. Preferire, to prefer, is an ire isk verb. Let's look at its conjugation. Io preferisco, tu preferisci, lui preferisce, noi preferiamo, voi preferite, loro preferiscono. Now, on the surface, this might look a little strange, but let's focus for a second on the endings without paying attention to that little isk thing that is in between the stem and the ending in some of these forms. Let's look just at the endings. They are these, right? O, I, e, iamo, ite, ono. In other words, they are exactly the same endings that we already learned for ire verbs. So what is the difference? Well, like their name says, these are isk verbs. So the difference is that in some of the forms of these verbs, we insert isk, isc, or in Italian, esc, right? We insert those three letters in between the stem and the ending. In what forms of the verb do we insert isk? Well, look at the table carefully. In the io form, we insert isk, right? It's not prefero, it's preferisco. In the tu form, we also insert it. It's not preferi, it's preferisci. In the lui and lei form, there's isk as well. Preferisce instead of prefere. No isk for noi. Okay, preferiamo. No isk for voi either. Preferite. But we do insert isk for loro. Preferiscono instead of preferono. And this is the same for all isk verbs. In other words, isk verbs are conjugated with the same endings as any other ire verb. The only difference is that we insert isk in between the stem and the ending for the io, tu, lui, lei, and loro forms. Okay? Again, we insert isk only for the io, tu, lui, lei, and loro forms. Or, if you find that easier to remember, we insert isk everywhere but for noi and voi. Okay? Now, listen to the pronunciation of this carefully. Io preferisco, tu preferisci, lui preferisce, noi preferiamo, voi preferite, loro preferiscono. I'm going to read the forms that have isk only one more time. Preferisco, preferisci, preferisce, preferiscono. The reason why I am pronouncing these for you is in order to remind you that C has two sounds in Italian, right? A strong sound and a soft sound, ch, right? And if you recall, the soft sound applies when the C is followed by an I, chi, or by an E, che. In all other cases, it sounds k. So this rule is very important for pronouncing the isk verbs, of course, right? So notice that in preferisco and preferiscono, it's followed by an O. So we pronounce it k. In preferisci and preferisce, it is followed by I and E, so we use the soft sound. All right? These are the isk verbs. Let me give you, for your reference, a list of isk verbs. It's very small. It's the smallest of all regular verb groups in Italian, but it still has some very, very important verbs. Capire, to understand. Diminuire, to diminish or to become smaller. Finire, to finish. Fornire, to furnish, right? As in to furnish a room, to find the furniture for it and install it. Preferire, the one we just did, to prefer. Pulire, to clean. Punire, to punish. Restituire, to give back. And spedire, to send. As in to send a package or a letter. Okay? Now, before we end the video, let's think a little bit about the first verb in this list, capire. How would you conjugate this verb, taking into account that it's an isk verb? Well, io capisco, tu capisci, lui capisce, noi capiamo, voi capite, loro capiscono, right? Now listen to the lui and lei form of the verb again, capisce. Lui capisce, he understands. Lei capisce, she understands. Does this sound familiar? If you have watched films like The Godfather, right, or The Sopranos, it will sound familiar, right? It's a word that many Italian Americans still use, capisce, right? Capisce is a slightly mispronounced version of capisce, right? Right? He understands, she understands, right? Or capisci, you understand, right? So they ask capisci, right? Meaning capisci, do you understand? Right? That is why they use that word. It comes directly from Italian, of course. And it has that ish sound because it is an isk verb. Okay? So this is all for today. These are the ire isk verbs. And the activity, you already know what I'm going to ask you to do, right? Please take two of these verbs, other than preferire, please, two different verbs from this very list you're looking at and conjugate them using the rule I just told you about and send me the file. Ok? Grazie ragazzi, ci vediamo la prossima settimana. Ciao ciao.